with the press, and then we went right inside, took the coat off, sat down, and did the interview. So it was all in that same just text. This is true. Oh my gosh, what? And people were just overjoyed.
What an amazing opportunity to pull back the curtain and let people see what's happening at the start.
Las Vegas, the city where secrets get buried under neon lights and chapel vows disappear faster than last night's memory. But there's one secret that's been sitting there for decades, and it's about Meghan Markle. Before the royal wedding, before the Netflix deals, before the Montecito mansion, there was a man named Joe Giuliano. And according to people who were there, he didn't just date her, he married her. Small chapel, quick signatures, a promise that didn't even last the year. But here's the thing, this isn't about why she left. It's about what Joe's family saw in her back then that the rest of us are only now starting to get.
After nearly 3 decades of silence, rumors are swirling that Joe Giuliano, the man once believed to be Meghan Markle.
And once you hear what they noticed, her whole story's gonna click into place in a way you weren't expecting. Now, what Joe's family saw back then is gonna completely change how you see this whole thing. But real quick, if you want the full story, hit subscribe and smash that notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Drop a like if you're already hooked. All right, let's dive in. So let's talk about Joe Giuliano. This wasn't some Hollywood romance or tabloid fling that made headlines and sold magazines. This was real life, small and quiet, and honestly pretty ordinary in every way.
Frantic week that we've just experienced, but story cropped up today.
2012, the Republic.
A Vegas chapel that nobody remembers the name of. The kind of place where couples go on a whim after too many drinks or because they just can't wait another day. No cameras flashing in their faces. No guest list that anyone would ever care about. No royal protocol or seating arrangements. Just Meghan, Joe, a few signatures on some paperwork that probably got filed away in a dusty cabinet somewhere, and promises that, let's be real, didn't make it past the first year. There was no designer gown worth
Made people want to be around her. But soon, little things began to unsettle them. One former friend recalls
thousands of dollars, no balcony wave for the adoring crowds, none of that fairy tale stuff we all saw later. Just two people standing there in front of a stranger, thinking they were starting something that would actually last forever, that they'd found their person. And here's what you really need to understand about Joe to get why this whole thing matters. He came from a traditional Italian-American family, and I'm talking old school traditional, the kind where Sunday dinners aren't optional, where you show up no matter what else is going on in your life, where loyalty isn't just some word people throw around, it's
frantic week that we've just experienced, but story cropped up today.
2012, the Republic.
Literally everything. It's how you measure someone's worth. Family comes before careers, before personal ambitions, before pretty much anything else you can think of in this world. Joe was humble, genuinely down to earth in a way that's rare, especially when you get anywhere near Hollywood circles. He was the type of guy who wasn't out there chasing fame or trying to climb any social ladders or network his way into better opportunities. He just wanted a simple, honest life with someone he loved. Build a home together, maybe start a family eventually, grow old in the same house.
Meghan Markle's shocking court revelation. The untold story of a 21-year-old secret daughter.
That's literally it. Nothing complicated, nothing flashy. But that marriage, it fell apart fast, really fast. And when you put that quiet little Vegas moment next to the royal wedding, the entire world watched years later, you know, the one with millions of people glued to their screens across every continent. The custom designer dress that cost more than most people's houses. The horse-drawn carriage, the whole massive production with orchestras and flower arrangements and security details. It almost feels like you're looking at two completely different people living two completely different lives. Because in a lot of ways, they were two different people.
Have you ever seen that video?
No.
Pull that video up, because it's one of my favorites.
Many people doubt Meghan has long been a mother, following her attendance at...
Joe knew a version of Meghan that the rest of us never got to see, never even knew existed. The before version, the one without the polish and the PR team and his family, they got a front row seat to something that would take the world years, maybe decades, to even start questioning or picking apart. They saw it early, way before anyone else did. They knew something wasn't quite right. Now, at first, the Giuliano family absolutely loved her. They were captivated.
In what could only be described as a devastating revelation, The parents of successful businessman Joe Giuliano have finally broken their silence.
Meghan had this thing about her, this magnetic quality that just pulled people in. She was charming in a way that felt effortless, polished, but not fake, you know? She'd walk into a room and somehow everyone wanted to talk to her, be around her, get to know her better. She knew exactly what to say, exactly how to smile, exactly when to laugh. The family thought Joe had found someone special, someone who could fit right into their world. But then something started feeling off. It's hard to explain, but people close to them began noticing these little things that didn't quite add up.
Join us as we reveal the untold truth behind Meghan's first husband, Meghan Markle, and Joe Giuliano's secret.
One of Joe's relatives described it perfectly. They said it felt like she was auditioning for something bigger, like every interaction was a rehearsal for a role she hadn't gotten yet. That stuck with them, because once you see it that way, you can't unsee it. There was this family dinner that people still talk about. Meghan was invited, obviously, and she showed up looking perfect, acting sweet, saying all the right things. But here's what made it weird. Every single answer she gave felt too perfect, too rehearsed. Every laugh sounded like she'd practiced it in a mirror. One family member sitting across from her said it was like watching someone perform in real time, like she was observing herself from the outside and adjusting her act.
What do families know that the rest of us don't? What kind of truth makes a family so terrified that they'd rather disappear?
Based on how people were reacting. Smile bigger here, softer voice there, lean in when this person talks, nod more enthusiastically when that person shares a story. It was calculated in a way that made people uncomfortable once they noticed it. And Joe's father, he saw right through it early on. He told a friend something that turned out to be almost prophetic. He said, "She's got Hollywood in her eyes, and that never mixes well with marriage." He wasn't trying to be harsh or judgmental. He just knew.
Slowly, unease began to settle in.
When someone's already planning their exit before they've even settled in, you can feel it. There's this restlessness, this constant looking over the shoulder for the next better thing. Joe was thinking about building a life, maybe buying a house, talking about kids someday. But Meghan, she was already planning something else entirely, something bigger, something that didn't include quiet family dinners or staying in one place for too long. And the more time his family spent with her, the clearer that became. So while Joe's sitting there dreaming about their future together,
Joe Giuliano, the man rumored to be Meghan's first husband, has allegedly released photos that could rewrite.
Looking at houses they could maybe afford on his salary, talking about what kind of neighborhood they'd want to raise kids in someday, what the backyard should look like. Meghan's got her eyes on something completely different. Los Angeles, acting, Hollywood, the whole dream. That's where her head was at, like constantly. And honestly, Joe wasn't part of that vision. He just didn't know it yet, or maybe he did and didn't want to believe it. Around this time, Meghan started talking more and more seriously about making the move to LA to chase acting opportunities. She wanted it bad, you could tell. It was all she'd bring up in conversations.
Meghan wasn't trying to join their family. She was studying it, learning from it, extracting what she needed.
Auditions, headshots, networking, all of it. And Joe's parents, they were cautious, but they weren't trying to shut her down or anything like that. They offered advice, asked some pretty reasonable questions that any concerned parents would ask. Where would she stay when she got out there? How would she pay rent and bills and everything else while she was getting started? Who did she know out there that could help her get her foot in the door, introduce her to the right people? Normal parent stuff, right? Just looking out for someone they thought was going to be part of their family for the long haul. But here's where things got really cold.
Meghan Markle and her first husband, Trevor Engelson. Meghan Markle's first husband is a very successful Hollywood producer.
Meghan didn't like being questioned at all. One of Joe's relatives who was sitting at that table said it wasn't even anger that came out of her when they started asking these questions. It was something way icier than that, more controlled, more calculated. She didn't yell or storm off dramatically or slam any doors. She just shut down completely. And in that moment, you could see it in her face, in the way her whole expression changed. She'd made a decision right then and there. They weren't family to her anymore.
Meghan wasn't trying to join their family. She was studying it, learning from it, extracting what she needed.
They were obstacles, things standing in her way that she needed to move past or get around. The warmth was just gone. Someone flipped a switch. Not long after that dinner, she was just gone. No warning, no explanation, no, hey, I need some time to think conversation. Nothing at all. Joe tried everything he could think of. He called her phone over and over until his fingers hurt from dialing, left voicemails that never got returned or even acknowledged. He wrote her actual letters, the old-fashioned kind, hoping maybe she'd read those if she wasn't picking up calls. He even drove to her old apartment multiple times.
Before the royal headlines and palace spotlight, Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, had lived at
different times of day, hoping to catch her coming or going, but it was like she'd vanished into thin air overnight. Poof, complete radio silence, the kind that makes you question if the person was ever really there at all. Get this though, before she disappeared, she'd apparently made Joe promise her something. She told him to stay quiet about everything, about them, about the marriage, about what they had together, all of it. And the way people close to Joe describe it, it wasn't a gentle request between two people who cared about each other.
Before the crown, before the palaces, before Prince Harry, there was Joe.
It was more like a warning. She made it crystal clear. No room for misunderstanding, that if he ever talked publicly about what they had, about their time together, there would be consequences. She didn't spell out what those consequences would be, but the implication was heavy enough. So Joe, as heartbroken and confused and lost as he was, he kept his mouth shut tight. Whether that was out of lingering respect for her wishes or genuine fear of what she might actually do if he spoke up, nobody's totally sure. Probably a complicated mix of both, if we're being honest.
At first, they thought it was just youthful dreaming, but soon they realized it wasn't a dream, it was a mission. Meghan was.
But either way, he stayed silent for literal decades while she went off and built this whole new life, this whole new identity that didn't include a single trace of him anywhere, like he never existed at all. And here's what makes this even more brutal. Meghan didn't just leave Joe and move on with her life like most people do after relationships end. She erased him completely. Photos they'd taken together, gone. Letters they'd written disappeared. Any physical trace of the time they spent together, the life they tried to build.
I've already settled it for myself, so flattery and criticism go down the same drain, and I'm quite free. And very hard thing to
wiped away like it never existed in the first place. It was methodical, almost clinical in how thorough it was. The marriage itself just stopped being mentioned by anyone. It's like this unspoken agreement happened where nobody talked about it anymore. And if you didn't know to look for it, you'd never even know it was there. And for years, that's exactly how it stayed. Buried, forgotten. A chapter that got deleted from the story completely. But then fast forward to when Meghan became globally famous, when her face was suddenly everywhere and everyone wanted to know everything about her life.
Meghan Markle's roar. Joe Giuliano's shocking revelation about a secret daughter born in 1990.
That's when people who'd known her back then started quietly wondering among themselves. Old friends, acquaintances from college, people who remembered seeing her with Joe, they noticed this weird gap in her timeline, this missing year that nobody could quite account for. But here's the thing, they didn't say anything publicly. They just noticed it, maybe whispered about it in private conversations, and moved on. Because honestly, what were they gonna do? She was royalty by that point. Who's gonna challenge that? Listen to what Joe apparently told a friend years ago.
Before royal headlines and palace doors, Meghan Markle...
In a private moment when he was being honest about the whole thing, he said, "She told me if she made it big, no one would know I existed." And she meant it. That wasn't some throwaway comment or an exaggeration. That was a promise she made to herself, and she followed through on it completely. She built this new life, this new identity, brick by brick, and Joe wasn't allowed to be part of the foundation. He had to be erased so the structure could stand the way she wanted it to. Here's what really hurt Joe's family, though. It wasn't the breakup itself.
What if the biggest royal secret didn't start in London, but in Chicago, 1994?
2 college
Relationships end all the time. People move on. That's just life. What got to them was how deliberately she removed them from her story. They'd welcomed her in, treated her like she was already family, made space for her at their table. And she didn't just walk away from that. She acted like it never happened, like they never mattered, like those dinners and conversations and moments meant absolutely nothing. Think about that for a second. After her royal wedding, when the whole world was watching and sending congratulations, and everyone who'd ever crossed paths with her was reaching out,
marital history continued to stir controversy, especially in light of new claims regarding her previous romantic.
the Giuliano family sent nothing. Not a card, not a message, not even a simple congratulations text. Radio silence. And that silence, it said everything. They'd seen her rewrite history once before, watched her erase a whole chapter of her life, because it didn't fit the narrative she wanted. They knew they were part of the version she'd buried. The version she needed the world to forget existed. So they stayed quiet. Not because they were scared or trying to protect her, but because what was the point? She'd already made it clear years ago that they were irrelevant to the story she was telling. Their silence wasn't support. It was the loudest statement they could make. And for a long time,
Before royal headlines and palace doors,
nobody outside their circle even noticed. Meghan's new life was so shiny, so perfect, so carefully constructed that nobody thought to ask about the pieces that were missing. Nobody wondered about the gaps, at least not until much, much later. Here's where everything changed. After literal decades of keeping quiet, of honoring that promise he made, even though it cost him his own story, Joe Giuliano finally spoke up. He did an interview, and when those clips started circulating, when people actually heard his voice for the first time,
Meghan Markle unveils 48-pound Christmas candle collection, inspired by her royal wedding and the English countryside.
it hit different than anyone expected. Because Joe wasn't angry. He wasn't bitter or vengeful or trying to tear her down for revenge. He was just sad, heartbroken, even after all those years. There was this one line he said that absolutely destroyed people. He said, she wanted to marry the version of herself she thought she could become. Read that again. Not that she wanted to marry him, that she wanted to marry a version of herself. Like he was just a prop in her journey to becoming someone else. Someone bigger. Someone who didn't need a quiet guy from a traditional family.
They ain't like us. You know, like us, Meghan grew up in Southern California, and we love to just, you know, look at the show.
That line was devastating because it was so honest, so clear-eyed about what actually happened between them. It wasn't him blaming her or calling her names or making accusations. It was just this painful truth spoken out loud. And the way he said it, wistful, like he was mourning something that could have been beautiful if she'd wanted it to be. That's what made it cut so deep. Then the photos started showing up online, old college pictures that people had been sitting on for years, probably not even realizing what they had. Meghan and Joe together at NYU events, young and smiling, her in a thrift store coat that definitely wasn't designer.
Yes, that actually happened. Harry and Meghan walked right into one of America's biggest baseball events, dressed in matching Dodgers blue.
Him in a borrowed tux that didn't fit quite right. They looked happy. They looked real. Like two regular people trying to figure out life together before everything got complicated. Before Hollywood entered the equation. Before the ambition took over everything else. And listen to this. According to people who knew the family back then, Joe's parents had been uncomfortable with something specific about Meghan for a while. It wasn't that she wanted success or had big dreams. That's normal. Everyone wants to do well in life. It was how she measured success. She talked more about who noticed her than what she was actually doing.
We're not bitter, Maria insists, though her eyes suggest otherwise. We're concerned. We've seen this pattern before.
More about status than substance. More about being seen with the right people than building genuine connections. His mother supposedly told friends that Meghan seemed more interested in Hollywood than in home, more focused on climbing up than settling down. And that bothered them because in their world, in their value system, those priorities were backwards. But here's what made Joe's interview land so differently than typical ex-partner drama. He didn't sensationalize anything. He didn't sell out to tabloids with wild stories or exaggerations.
The image feels ordinary. But behind that frame lies the beginning of the most controversial
He just told his truth quietly, reflectively, like he was finally letting go of something he'd been carrying for way too long. There was no anger in his voice, no bitterness, no "she ruined my life" narrative. Just this gentle sadness about a relationship that ended before it really had a chance. Because one person was already looking past it, towards something shinier. People responded to that authenticity. They felt it because we've all known someone like that, right? Someone who's always performing, always thinking about the next opportunity, the next level up.
In a stunning turn of events that has sent shockwaves through the media and royal circles alike, Prince Harry was reportedly seen in tears as Joe
Never quite present where they are, and hearing Joe describe it so simply, so honestly, without any agenda besides finally being heard after decades of silence, that resonated. It felt real in a way that polished PR statements never do. The internet went crazy with it. Not in a mean way necessarily, just in a, wow, this explains so much kind of way. Comment sections filled up with people saying they finally understood something about Meghan's story that never quite made sense before. The pieces were clicking into place.
Before royal headlines and palace doors, Meghan Markle lived a different...
And for Joe, who'd stayed silent through her entire rise to fame, through the royal wedding, through all of it, this was his moment to just say, hey, I existed. What we had was real, even if she pretended it wasn't. Here's what happened when those interview clips reached Meghan. According to people close to the situation, she absolutely lost it. We're talking full meltdown. When she heard Joe say, my parents adored Meghan at first, but when the cameras started rolling, she wasn't the same girl. Something inside her just snapped.
Listen, let me tell you what's really going on in Buckingham Palace. Meghan Markle really had it coming. You ever notice how
that one line cut through everything she'd spent years building? All the careful image management, all the soft focus rebranding, the empowered Duchess persona, the whole carefully constructed thing, gone because Joe hadn't attacked her. He'd done something way worse. He'd humanized the version of her she'd fought so hard to bury. Word is, things got intense at the Montecito house. People said she couldn't put her phone down, couldn't stop checking what people were saying online, couldn't stop the spiral. Harry reportedly begged her to just step away from it all to let it blow over naturally.
It began with a photo. An old archived picture from Northwestern University, a student salsa club snapshot.
But Meghan went straight into damage control mode. Her PR team scrambled to draft statements, trying to spin it as a story about difficult past relationships before she found real love. But here's the problem with that approach. Joe hadn't painted himself as some bitter ex with an axe to grind. He came across as genuinely heartbroken, respectful even, reflective, and that made everything Meghan's team put out look defensive and cold by comparison. Get this timing though. This whole thing erupted right when Meghan was trying to launch her lifestyle brand. American Riviera Orchard, the jam jars, the whole domestic goddess rebrand.
After years of silence, Meghan Markle's first husband has finally spoken out. And what he's revealed?
It was supposed to be her big comeback. Her return to public life on her own terms. Major outlets were supposedly lined up to feature her products, do profiles on her new venture, the whole thing. But instead, every single publication that was meant to be running promotional pieces suddenly pivoted to running Who Was Meghan Before Harry retrospectives. The rebrand was dead before it even got off the ground, completely overshadowed by a quiet interview from a guy nobody'd heard of until that moment. Within days, Meghan tried to get ahead of it with her own televised sit-down.
What are the solutions? Why is he up there collecting a humanitarian award? What have he and Meghan?
It was supposed to be emotional, vulnerable, redemptive, the kind of thing that makes viewers tear up and forgive everything. But it backfired hard. At one point, when the interviewer brought up Joe's name, Meghan gave this tight little smile and said, "People change. Some people can't handle that." And viewers saw it. That flicker in her eyes, that tension between trying to look vulnerable while actually seething underneath. It didn't read as empowerment or growth. It read as someone barely holding it together. Someone who needed to control everything and couldn't stand that she'd lost control of this story.
If I told you somebody had 10 baby daddies in a period of 5 years, you'd probably think they're crazy. So when I tell you that Meghan Markle is on
Social media exploded. People started putting clips of Meghan's controlled defensive responses right next to clips of Joe's calm, nostalgic tone. The contrast was brutal. Comment sections that usually defended her started filling up with sympathy for Joe instead. She left the guy who loved her for fame, one comment said, and it got thousands of likes. Classic Hollywood story. Even people in the industry started whispering about it. One producer reportedly told a trade publication,
Husband, Joe Giuliano, has finally broken his silence, and what he revealed has left everyone talking. Behind the royal titles,
this Joe thing hit harder than any royal scandal because it made her human and not in the way she wanted. Meanwhile, Harry was stuck in the middle of all this. Publicly, he stood by her, obviously. That's what you do. But privately, sources said he was exhausted. He thought they'd left all the tabloid drama behind when they moved to California, that they could finally just live their lives in peace. But now, every time Meghan tried to move forward with something, her past kept showing up uninvited. And this time, it wasn't some anonymous source or made-up story.
Chicago, 1994. Before the royal titles, before the cameras, before the world ever heard the name Meghan,
it was someone who actually knew her, speaking calmly and honestly about what he saw. That's harder to dismiss, way harder. Here's where it gets even worse for her. By week 3, Meghan's team went into full crisis mode. Social media went dark, press events got quietly canceled, appearances postponed indefinitely, and her celebrity friends who used to publicly praise her, suddenly everyone had scheduling conflicts. The soft ghosting that happens when someone becomes toxic to your brand. Get this though, Meghan actually tried reaching out to Joe privately during all this.
I came across this picture of Meghan and wanted to share it because I found it very interesting.
But he didn't respond. Complete silence. And that silence did more damage than another interview could. It showed he wasn't doing this for attention or money. He'd said what he needed to say, and he was done. That non-response sent Meghan spiraling. People said she started blaming everyone. Her PR team, Harry, even close friends. But underneath the anger was fear. Because Joe's story was a mirror reflecting the Meghan before the Polish, before the PR machine. The version always looking past what she had towards something bigger. One commentator said something that went viral.
Yes, I forgot about this clip. I wonder though, it looks like the same dress and it makes sense that it would be. But it was so odd that
Joe Giuliano didn't destroy Meghan Markle. He revealed her blueprint. That's brutal because it suggests everything she became was there from the beginning. The ambition, the calculation, the willingness to erase people who didn't fit her story. According to insiders, she told her team, "They want me to disappear. I'll make them choke on my silence." But every time she spoke up, every statement released, it just reignited everything. The silence never came because she couldn't help herself. She needed to control the narrative too badly. Meanwhile, in Montecito, things changed. Security ramped up.
It was wafting through the most romantic city on earth, a vision in paper white, lending her regal...
Staff turnover increased. The tension between Harry and Meghan got thick enough to cut. The place felt less like a home, more like a fortress. One person put it perfectly. Joe didn't just open old wounds. He reminded Meghan of who she used to be, and that's the one person she can't stand to face. Because when someone from your past speaks up with their honest memories, there's no PR strategy that erases that. Joe reportedly told a friend, "I just wanted to tell the truth. I didn't think it would hurt her this much." But it did. It broke the image she'd spent years perfecting.
Every fairy tale begins with a secret. But this one doesn't start inside a palace. It starts in a small Toronto apartment. Long before
and left her exactly where she didn't want to be. The woman everyone was talking about, but not talking to. For someone who built an empire on controlling her story, that's the cruelest punishment. So here's what's wild about this whole thing. Joe Giuliano's quiet, honest interview did something that years of royal scandals and tabloid drama never could. It didn't destroy Meghan Markle. It just showed everyone who she was before all the titles and the carefully managed image. And somehow, that hit harder than any dramatic bombshell ever would. Because the most painful part for her wasn't that Joe shared some shocking story or said wild things about her.
I think having a partner, I mean, I asked you this when you were on my podcast. Like, do you think
It was simpler than that. He reminded the world, and maybe reminded her too, of the person she used to be. The version from before The Crown, before the Netflix deals, before Montecito. The girl in the thrift store coat with big dreams and bigger ambitions. And according to people who knew them both, that's the one person Meghan can't stand to face. Not because that version was bad, but because acknowledging her means acknowledging everyone she left behind to get where she is now. Joe himself said it best. I just wanted to tell the truth.
Well, well, well. Gather round, business analysts and drama lovers. Because today, we're diving into the royal disaster that is Meghan.
That's it. No agenda, no revenge plot, no book deal. Just a guy who stayed silent for decades, finally saying, hey, I was there. This happened, and it mattered, even if she pretends it didn't. And the truth, when it's that simple and that honest, it's impossible to spin or manage or PR your way out of. The irony's pretty thick here, right? Meghan built an entire empire on controlling her own narrative. Every interview carefully planned, every statement strategically worded, every public appearance designed to tell her story her way.
I'm just excited to be myself and be unfiltered and yeah, it's fun. Put him down in that amount of time.
And then this one quiet conversation from someone who knew her before all of that, it completely unraveled years of careful construction. Not because he tried to, but because authenticity always cuts through polish eventually. Here's what it comes down to. Sometimes the past doesn't need to be dramatic or scandalous to be devastating. It just needs to be honest. It just needs to exist. And when someone from your past stands up and says, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced, this is who you were with me.
More controversy from around the coronation. People are convinced that this is Meghan Markle dressed up.
There's no PR strategy that makes that disappear. You can ignore it, you can dismiss it, you can surround yourself with more security and fewer people who remember the old you. But you can't erase it. Not really. So what do you think? Was Joe's family right about what they saw all those years ago? Or is this just what happens when someone becomes famous and everyone suddenly reinterprets their past through a different lens? Drop your thoughts in the comments because honestly, this story makes you wonder about all of us, right? How much of who we become erases who we were? And is that growth or is it something else entirely? If you're into these kinds of stories, the ones that go deeper than headlines, hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more where this came from.